Hey everyone, John here with Photography Life, and today we're going to talk about the Radial filter in Lightroom. Now, this is a great tool that you might not have used before because you didn't know how to use it or when to use it, so that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go over what it is, how you use it, and when you might want to use it to edit your images. So let's go ahead and jump into Lightroom here, and I've got just this gray image pulled up, and what we're going to do with this, it just makes it a little bit easier to show you what's happening. So we'll do some tests on this, and then we'll jump over to a real image, and I'll edit it like I would typically edit it with the Radial filter. So first off, where can you find it? Well, it's over here under the histogram in these tools here, and it's this second one from the right that's a circle. And if you hover over it, then you can see it says Radial filter, and the shortcut is Shift M. So I love keyboard shortcuts, but you can also just click on it if you want to. So let's go ahead and click on it, and that opens up a palette of options here. Now we have, I'll kind of run through these really quickly. We have this mask option, which is basically just a new filter. So you can click new and it's going to give you a new one if you're already working on one, or you can go back and edit an existing one. We also have these different options down here that we can alter in our current filter. We can choose an effect if we want to and basically change any of these. So let's go ahead and take a look at burn, and you can see that's going to decrease our exposure by minus 0.3 stops, or decrease by 0.3 stops. You can also individually go adjust these. So say you wanted more than that, you can go down to minus 0.7. You can also click in here and just set something. If you wanted to increase your exposure by 0.5, you can just type 0.5 and there you go. So all of these are definitely adjustable. You'll probably end up using it the most for adjusting your exposure, but you can adjust these other different parts of your image as well. And then feather is something that I'll just need to show you how it works. So let's go ahead and jump in and put a filter on this gray image, and let's decrease the exposure by just 0.89 stops. So the way you apply one is you just click and you drag, and you can see you can change the shape if you want to. You can make it round, you can make it oval, big, small, however you want. And once you're happy with it, just let go. Now, what just happened? Well, we decreased the exposure 0.89 stops, and that is from this line going outwards from the center of this circle. So everything outside of this circle has been decreased by 0.89 stops, and on the inside it gradually goes back to the original exposure of the image. Now this feather is how quickly this exposure changes. So if we go to a very small feather, you can see it's an abrupt transition from original exposure directly to this new exposure outside the circle. Or we can feather it 100%, and you can see it's a very, very, very gradual transition down to the barely any of the original exposure left there. Now I just hovered over this pen, and you can see this red popped up, and that's showing us all the parts of the image that have been affected. Now on this one it's pretty easy to see, but on a normal image it actually does help quite a bit, which you'll see in just a minute here. You can also see this red pull up the mask by clicking down here, show selected mask overlay, and then you don't have to stay hovered over this pin. You can also turn it off and on by pressing O. That's another great keyboard shortcut. I love using them. So O will toggle that off and on again. So let's go ahead and drop that feather back down a little bit. Another thing that's important is once you have made a mask, you can always adjust it if you want to. So you're not set with the first thing you do. You can also move it by just clicking that pin and dragging it around. Now, a lot of people think this is the same as a vignette, but it's not the same because, for one, you can move it around. Vignettes only affect the corners and the edges of the image, and you can see this one you can really customize it to affect a very certain part of the image. So in this one you could never get a vignette to come all the way in here on the left side and then just barely touch the right side. That's just not how they work, and they're also typically not going to be nearly as customizable as this. Another big difference between this and vignetting is that you can add more than one. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's hit new up here. I could have also just, while I was in this one, hit enter, and it's going to let me put a new one in. And you see I have a new crosshair. This one no longer has this black dot in the middle, and I can just drag another one in here. Now these did multiply on top of each other just now. So what happened is this effectively has decreased twice this exposure, so 0.89, 0.89, and you can see how much darker it got. If I delete this one, I can just hit the delete key, and you can see this gets brighter again. So be aware that they do multiply on top of each other if you're doing something like a different exposure or an exposure adjustment. So just be aware that that's what is happening if your image suddenly gets too dark if you had two of them on there. Okay, there's one more thing I do want to show you. I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to invert the mask. And so what do you think is going to happen if I leave the exposure the same but invert the mask? Well, everything outside of the circle is unaffected and everything inside the circle is affected. So before, the outside got darker and the inside was the original exposure. This is the opposite. The outside is the original exposure. The inside gradually gets darker down to this, our new exposure of 0.89 stops underexposed. So that's just one other trick. If you want to affect just a small part of your image, you can always invert the mask. You can change it back, and you can see that went back to what it looked like before. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into an image that I have pulled up here, ready to add some radial filters to. I'm going to hit D to develop, and I've already done my basic edits to this image. You can see I've made these adjustments over here, but I kind of want to put a little more focus on my couple here and darken the rest of this area around them. So I could use a brush or graduated filters, but for this image I'm going to use a radial filter because it's just so nice and kind of a round shape. So again, let's just go ahead and use the setting I had. Let's drop it by almost one stop, and I'm just going to kind of click in the middle of them, up and out, and you can see right now that's an inverted mask. It made them darker. That is not what I want, so let's click that, and you can see instantly how much it changes this photo. Now that might be a little too much for me, so what I'm going to do is just click in here, and let's make it minus 0.5. See how that works. You can also just drag this and kind of eyeball it and see what looks good for you. And let's go ahead and just stick with right around there. Now, that has made my couple stand out a little bit more than this foliage, and that's really what I wanted to do with this. But I want to show you one more cool trick. Now, this is something that I learned just through trial and error, and I use it a lot. It's a nice little trick that can add a subtle warm glow to your images, and so I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So in the radial filter, if you want to add a little sunlight glow, I want to make this look like there's a little bit of sun coming through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the exposure just a little bit. Let's actually just use this dodge preset because that's only 1/4 of a stop, but I'm going to add a little color too. So you can either do some color in here if you wanted to pick a custom color, or what I want to do, I want to go ahead and actually change that back. And if you do end up picking a color and you don't like it, just put the saturation to 0 and it goes away down here. And I'm just going to add a little temperature up here. So let's warm things up by maybe, well, let's go to 20 and see, or 18, see how that looks. And I'm going to drag a small oval in here, and you can see it's inverted again. And basically what I'm doing is I'm adding this like warm light that's coming through here on top of them. And if I turn this off and turn it back on again, you can see what happened. If I go delete this and then add it back in again, you can see it's just kind of adding a nice little warm glow in here, and it's coming down on their faces. I might bring this up just a little bit, but that's one trick that I use fairly often when I want to make it look like there's some sunlight coming in and there's not. You can always add this little extra warmth in here. I might change this and drop the exposure just a bit. Now, one other trick, if you hover over the field that you want to edit and just use the up and down arrow keys, you can change the exposure or any other value as well. So I think that looks pretty good there. And there you go. We've used 2 different radial filters on this image. I'm going to go ahead and turn them off. That's what it looked like when we started, and that's what it looks like now. Really quick, really simple. I love this tool. I use it all the time on lots of different portraits and wedding images. It's one of those that if you haven't used it before, you might not have known how to use it, but hopefully this has shown you how to use it and that it is actually a fairly useful and easy to use tool. Now there's one other part of the radial filter that I do want to show you, and that is this brush option. So let's go ahead and say, let's edit this one, and let's say I didn't want any of that color on their skin. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to hit O and turn on this mask overlay. I'm gonna go over here to brush, and the reason I turn this on is I can see exactly where it's touching them. So what I wanna do, if I wanted to add some more, I could go and add a little more of this over here without having to add a new filter, but that's not what I wanna do, so I'm gonna undo that. And I'm going to erase, and you can erase this anywhere it's touching, anywhere it's affecting. And so I'm just going to go ahead and erase it off of their skin, off of their hair, keep it completely unaffected, and you can see that red disappearing. That's a whole lot easier than if I was just kind of trying to eyeball it and just kind of go on their skin like this. I can see that it is actually truly removed from everywhere that it was touching. And now, if I hit O again, you can see that the color is completely gone off of them, and I've just simply used this erase brush. Well, I hope you found this useful. If you did, please go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our new videos. Also, head on over, check out photographylife.com for articles, tips, tricks, and photography news, and we'll see you next time.